Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tool of the Week, where we look at one useful software engineering tool every week. This week we're going to be taking a look at Doxygen, which is a tool that helps you create nice looking documentation for your code. So you place comments on your entities, and by entities here I mean classes, member functions, free functions, things like that. So anytime that I say entity, that's what I mean in this video. So you put special comments in front of your entities, and then the tool Doxygen will generate documentation from your source code. So as a software engineer, you'll often have the need to document your code. Doxygen is the tool for documenting C++ code. It's very powerful, and after watching this tutorial, it should be very simple to use. So the goal of this tutorial is to teach you the fundamental concepts of Doxygen. And I want to show you how I use it. The way that I use it will make it so that you can easily generate documentation for your API and also textual tutorials for your code. So let's go ahead and go over installing it. Installing it is very straightforward. Just Google Doxygen, go to the website, go to download, and then go ahead and scroll down until you see binaries. And this one is for Windows. So download and run this installer and follow its prompts. Easy as that. Now let me show you how to quickly see some documentation being generated. So if you already have some source files, so if you have a project, then you can use yours. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new project using Visual Studio from scratch, because for demonstration and for learning purposes, I like to start everything from scratch. So I'm going to launch Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project, an empty project. I'm going to call it Doxy Project. I'm going to put it on the desktop and hit create. So let's open this folder and see what it has generated for us. Is just the project and solution and some user settings files. So no source code yet. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of source code in here. So first of all, I'm going to put a main file here. With a main function that doesn't do anything. And then I'm going to put a file for a class. So a header and a source. I'm going to call it my class1. And my code generation tool here created myclass1.h and myclass1.cpp for the declaration and the definition of the class. And recall that I said you have to put a special comment near your entity in order to have Doxygen extracted and documented, basically. So I use the 3 slashes. There's a few different ways that Doxygen allows you to specify doxy comments. I like to put 3 slashes. So this is the brief description for this class, and then put a period. And that is the brief description. So everything until a period is the brief description. And any sentences after that is the detailed description. I like to put an empty line. You don't have to. This is the detailed description. More stuff here. So more sentences. There we go. So we have a basic project with some source. Now let's launch Doxy Wizard. So for this field up here, just go ahead and choose your project folder. For here, where's source code directory, so you're telling it where your source code is. Select your project folder right here. And the destination directory is where you want to spit out the documentation. So inside your Doxy project, I'm going to create a new folder called doc, and I want the generated documentation to go in here. Okay, you can give it a name, that's project name. give it a project synopsis, which is a short description of your project. I'm going to say just that. And a project version, I'm going to say very early alpha. And you can even have a small project logo. So let me just quickly whip something out here. All right, we'll save that as logo. And we will select it. And now go to the Run tab and click Run Doxygen. It says finished, so now let's go inside our doc folder and go to our HTML tab and open up index.html. So there we go, ta-da. One note here, it also generated latex, so Doxygen can be used to generate different forms of documentation. I'm only really going to cover the HTML one, so delete the latex folder and then go back to the Doxy wizard in the wizard tab and go to the output section and uncheck the latex. We don't want to generate latex documentation, we just want to generate HTML. Good, so leave that there. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far. Now let me show you guys some configurations that I like to do to make this look better and to make it easier to use Doxygen. Well, first of all, before we do that, let me really quickly show you our class. So I'm going to go to Classes, Class List, My Class 1, and here's the brief description, and here's the detailed description. And so it works. Now, there's this little annoying note that says the documentation for this class was generated from the following file. I just see this as noise, so I want to remove that. I also want to get rid of this top bar because I want to put a sidebar. I like the sidebar more. So let's go ahead and make those changes. So again, we're going to make a couple of configuration changes to make working with Doxygen easier and to also make the output look better. I'm going to leave that up there, and let's go ahead and go inside our wizard and change a few values. So click on the Expert tab. So the wizard and its different sections let you change only a few of the Doxygen's configuration values. If you want access to all of the configuration values, you have to go to the Expert tab. And then there's more sections, and each section has a lot more fields. So first go to the project section and turn on JavaDoc Auto Brief. So right over here. Now that basically enables us to use this particular syntax where the first sentence is the brief description and all subsequent sentences are the detailed description. And if you want that to work, this has to be enabled. Now go to the build section and check this extract all option. Normally, Doxygen will only extract documentation for entities that you have placed the Doxygen comment for. But I like to extract everything for completeness sake. So enable that. Then in the build section still, go to the show used files, this one right here, and uncheck that. That's just a little bit of noise added to the end of every documentation page. I don't like it. Go to the HTML section and go to the generate tree view at the bottom. Enable that. That's the sidebar. And then also check disable index. That basically disables the top bar. So now we will run and we will see what it looks like. So here's what it looked like before, refresh, and here's what it looks like now. I think it looks better this way. So let me just show you the output really quick. I think it's worth it. You can browse by classes, files, or namespaces. But since we don't have any namespaces, you don't see that category over here. If we did have namespaces, you would see it. So for example, for the classes, I can get a list of the classes, or I can do an index where it's basically categorized by their first letter. Okay, so I've shown you how to quickly get your project documented and generate some documentation. Now I want to delve a little bit into more detail regarding the documentation syntax itself. So if you recall, I said that for each one of your entities, you can have a brief description and a detailed description. The brief description is the first sentence, and all subsequent sentences are the detailed description. So this, I'm going to call the whole thing the doxy comment. So you can place this doxy comment in the declaration or definition of the entity. So for example, let's go ahead and create a member function here. And let's document it. So I can either place it here, or let's generate an implementation for this. So this implementation does nothing. I can either put it here in the declaration or the .h, or I can put it in the actual up here. So I could also put it here. I normally don't like to put it in the implementation file. I like to put things in the header file, like this. Now there's a few special commands that you can use inside the doxy comment. One of them is parameters. So let's say that this member function had two parameters, A and B, and you wanted to document what each of those parameters were for. Just do @param, name of the parameter, and then a description. And let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So I'm going to run again. And we're going to look at this member function. Here's the documentation for the parameters. It says A, this describes parameter A, B, this describes parameter B. You can also document the return. You can say return, or returns. I'm going to say nothing important. There is also a C command, and here you can put a C also section. So let me show you by example. Let's say that we had another member function here. And we wanted this one to be the documentation for this member function. We wanted to list a link to this, and maybe even another one. So let's say another member function too. So we can do C, another member function, and then space. And if we run this, refresh, and you can see that that C command created the C also section, and it gives us links to both of those member functions. I can click these to go to that particular member function. Also, another useful set of commands is the @note. This is for a little note, so a little note, a little side note basically. You can do @attention for something that you want to grab the attention of the reader. So a little more important than a note. And you can do @warning for something that should not be missed by the user. Let's see what they look like. So here's what the note looks like: attention and warning. So as I mentioned, the differences between these, the note I see as a little side thing. It's not that important. Attention is if you want it to grab the attention of the reader, and warning is something that could result in very bad consequences if it was missed. I should also note that you can use Markdown in your description. So for example, the syntax for italicizing or emphasizing in Markdown is just to put one asterisk around it. And then for bold, it's 2 asterisks. And let's also add a little bit of more Markdown. I also like to create a level 3 heading and say that it's an example. And I can even create a code block here, a C++ code block. Just put .cpp like this. And let's say we're going to put a code example here. And now let's see what that looks like. Run. So my class 1, the detailed, and there you go. Our Markdown shows. Here's the emphasized and here's the strong emphasized. So the point of that is that you can use Markdown in your descriptions. Okay, so I've shown you how to document your entities like your classes and functions and such. Oh, before I go on, I should also show you how to link. So I showed you this @c command, which creates the see also section. But if within your description, if you use the name of another entity, it will already create a link to it. So for example, let's say in the detailed description of this, I want to say this is similar to another member function. If I just do that, that will create a link to this. So I'll show you. See, this is similar to another member function. It creates a link to that. If I click it, it takes me there. So if you just use the name of another function in the description, it will create a link for it. If you don't like that behavior, there is an option to override it. Now, if let's say you wanted to refer to a member function in another class, we'll just put the name of the class and then 2 colons, just like you scope in C++, like this. Anytime there's ambiguity, you need to put the name of the class. And if this member function was overloaded, then you need to specify the particular overload that you want to call by putting in the types. You don't have to put the parameter names, but you do have to put the types. But if there is no overloads, you don't have to specify the parameters at all. And if you leave out the class name, then it picks a function that is named basically another member function with that name. Okay, so now I have shown you how to fancily document your entities. But often, in addition to this, what you want to do is create like a tutorial, a textual tutorial for your code base. So you can do that by just basically, let's go to our folder here. So within your source, right, you can just place a bunch of Markdown files. And let me actually show you the location where you can, I want to show you the location where you can tell Doxygen where it should look at. So if you recall from the beginning of the tutorial, if we go to the wizard, and over here we specified a directory for our source, right? Also, I forgot to mention, but it's really important, go ahead and check the scan recursively because you want to scan any directories that are within this directory as well. Okay, now go to expert and we're going to go to input, and now this input section, right? You can see that the wizard automatically put whatever we had over here. But you can also add additional places that you want to look for sources. And furthermore, if you look at the exclude section, you can specify file patterns that will be excluded. So if it finds some files in your input list, but they match one of your exclude patterns, then they will not be used to generate documentation. So the combination of the input and the exclude configurations lets you be very specific with what files and which locations you want searched for source and markdown files. Now, having said that, how do we create tutorials, not just extract API documentations? So again, put a bunch of markdown files anywhere in your search path, I will call it, and those will be extracted and a page will be created here on the sidebar for each one of those markdown files. And now I'm going to show you how to organize it. So what I like to do is I like to create a folder called Doc Pages. This is going to have all my documentation pages. I put all my markdown files in here. So let's go ahead and create a markdown file. And we will say we're going to save this in our doc pages. We're going to call it page1.markdown. And now we will go ahead and run Doxygen. It's done. Refresh. Look at the sidebar. You see that it found our markdown file. And it took the first heading as the title. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to, well, first of all, let me go ahead and delete this page 1. And let me create a main page. So inside there, I like to create a file called main page. And then I like to put the main page special command in there. And this is your main page. So put any text in here, including Markdown. You can use Markdown in the description of your entities, and you can use Markdown in your tutorial pages, basically. So I will show you what this will look like now. So give a title for the main page command. I'm going to say this is the title of your main page. Let's save that and run. And refresh. And you can see if I click on my project, right? So I'm not clicking on this particular page. I'm actually clicking on my project here. And this is my main page. It also creates a link on the sidebar to it. So there's a title and there's the text. So that's how you create a main page. Now let's go ahead and create a page for a subsystem. So I like to usually create one page per subsystem. And I'll also show you how to hierarchically organize your pages. So I'm going to create a new page, let's say for subsystem 1. I'm going to save it. I'm just going to call it, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call mine or let's just call it, subsystem1.md. Okay, so at the top of this, we're going to name the page. So use the page command and name the page something. I like to name it the same as the file, but this name must be unique. And then give it a title. The title doesn't have to be unique. So some title. So I'm going to give it subsystem1 title. And then put a table of contents, a special command. This will generate a table of contents. And now we can write regular Markdown if we wanted to. But what I like to do here, instead of using, because I've had problems with using like the regular Markdown headers, so I actually like to use the Doxygen equivalent of that. So if you want to create a section, you just do section. And then give it a section ID. And the section ID must be unique as well. So I usually call it the name of the subsystem. So subsystem1. And then I do section 1. And I'll give it a section title. And this title doesn't have to be unique. So, and I'm going to put some text in here. Okay, and then I'm going to create another section. and I'm going to create some more text, and I'm going to create a subsection. So now I'm going to name this Subsystem 1, Subsection 1. Just so I can identify everything. And then I'm going to put okay, let's save this and run. Refresh, and we can now see our subsystem here on the side, and we have a nice table of content in here. So we have section 1, section 2, subsection 1, just like we specified. So section 1 has no additional subsections, but section 2 has. So it gives you a nice hierarchical view of the file and all of its subsections. Now I'm going to show you how to hierarchically arrange pages. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new page here. Let's change language mode, Markdown. Save this, and I'm going to call this subsystem 1. So this is a subsystem under subsystem 1. I'm again going to do page. I'm going to give a name to this page. I'm going to call it subsystem 1. I'm going to give it a title, subsystem 1, and some text here. Okay. Now if I leave it like this, both of them will be top level pages, both this page and this page. I will show you. Well, let's generate a table of contents on this page as well, even though I don't have any section or subsection commands here, but if in the future I do, I will make sure that I generate a table of contents. So everything is saved. Let's run. So as you can see, both my pages, the subsystem 1 and the subsystem 1, both of them we have a link on the sidebar here. But what if I want this subsystem 1 to be under this subsystem 1? So in other words, how do I hierarchically arrange these pages? Well, all I have to do, both of these pages are named. I just go to the parent page and I add at subpage and then the identifier of the subpage. So subsystem 1, like that. And now I run, refresh. Now, as you can see here, and in subsystem 1, subsystem 1 is basically a subpage. So that's how you arrange pages in a hierarchical fashion. Another useful thing is to create links between pages or sections or subsections. It's very easy to do that. So let's say inside the okay, so in the subsystem 1 page, right, we have this particular section. I'm going to copy its identifier, and then I'm going to go to the place where I want to create a link. So how do I create an actual link? Well, you do @ref, and then the identifier to the place that you want to link to, and then you can optionally put a link name. If you don't put a link name, it will get the name of the title of this thing. So I can say, see this page for more. And let's see what this results in. So there you go. We created a link to section 2. So that's how you can link between sections or pages. Now the last thing that I want to show you is how to insert images. So let me whip out a fancy little image here. I'm going to use, I guess this. Change up the color. All right, that looks fancy enough. And I'm going to save it, let's say, where should I save it? Well, I'll save it as random image.png. And you want to generally save this in a images folder. So I like to call doc images. And any documentation images, I like to keep it there. Now, to use the image, just go ahead and use the Markdown syntax for putting in an image. So we'll put it in here. So here is an image. The Markdown syntax for an image is like this. Okay. Now, in order for Doxygen to find this random image, we have to tell it where it is. And we can do that via a configuration. Go to the Expert tab, and then go to the Input, and there's an image, I believe, an image path. An image path. So we're going to add an image path. So we don't want to do this, I guess we will bunch up, we will learn another thing here. So the image path we want relative to our project is just in a folder called doc images. So we're just going to add that like that. And then we're going to save it. Well, we don't have to save it. Let's run it. This should work. Run. Refresh. Go to oh, I forgot to save. Okay, run. Refresh, and there goes the image. And the last thing that I want to show you, so this GUI that we've been using, it's just been basically generating a Doxy file for us. If you actually want to save all of your configuration, just click on Save As, and then somewhere in your project, I like to save it, and I just like to leave the name Doxy file. So I go ahead and save that. And you don't have to use this GUI. We can just use a command prompt. So I'm going to change to my desktop. Okay, so I'm inside my Doxy project. Now I'm going to run Doxygen on my Doxy file. And that generated my documentation as well. So as a quick recap, what we've learned is the basics of Doxygen, that you specify all of your basically all of your configurations, such as where the source files are, where your images are, how you want things to look like, things like that. You specify them in a Doxy file. Now you can edit that little Doxy file using a text editor or the GUI. I like using the GUI. It's just easier to use. And then you launch the Doxygen program. You feed it that Doxy file. The Doxygen program will then go look at your source locations and find all your source files and markdowns, and it will extract and generate this HTML documentation for you. I have a nice little diagram of that somewhere. Let me see if I can find that. So here's the diagram. It shows that you specify all your configurations, like where are your source files, where to place the generated documentation, colors, etc. You put all of that in a Doxy file. You can use a text editor or the GUI to modify this. You feed that to the Doxygen executable, which I launched via the command line, or when you click this Run Doxygen button, it launches that as well. And that Doxygen will go to your source, get all your source files and the Markdown files, and then it will produce an HTML folder with the generated documentation. The HTML folder is placed at the location that's specified in the Doxy file. So that's how it works. I realized that this tutorial was a little bit long, and I know you guys don't like long tutorials because your attention spans are probably not too long. But I do ask you to bear with me because I don't want my tutorials to just be a recipe that you blindly follow. I want to basically teach you to fish for yourself. So I generally like to take my time and I like to present the core concepts of whatever it is that I'm teaching. And then I also like to present you with my recipe of how I like to use it. But I don't just want to give you the recipe and not give you the core concepts. That's why my tutorials tend to be a little bit longer, but I think that they are much more fruitful than just blindly following a recipe. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see you guys in a future one. Bye-bye.